everybody, I'm Michelle and welcome to Big Valley Living. I am so excited because I am a part of Canuary 2024. So I'd like to first of all thank Leisa at Suttons Daze for allowing us to come and share our canning experiences with you. And if you have never been here, thanks a lot for coming by. We hope that you like our channel and that you enjoy the recipe that we're going to make today. This collaboration is sponsored by 4 Jars as well as Suttons Daze this year. There are going to be some really cool prizes given out on January 31st at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm actually going to drop a link below in our description to Lisa's announcement video on Suttons Daze, and then you'll get to see all of the fun prizes that are going to be given away. We really need to get some mushrooms on the shelf, so we have decided to pressure can mushrooms. Check it out. Oh my gosh. Now, mushrooms are a low acid food, so they need to be pressure canned. We are going to be using a recipe out of a trusted guide. This is the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning. You can either purchase a copy and print like this old, look at how well used this is. I've got them all marked up and everything. Or you can find the recipes online. When you're doing certain low acid foods, I would recommend going to the USDA site and making sure that there haven't been any changes to the instructions for canning your foods. Before we get started, I do want to share just a couple of tips and then we'll get into the kitchen. Always use a trusted source for your recipes. Science doesn't lie. Another thing you want to do is to read that recipe at least a couple of times prior to canning whatever you want to can. Make sure that you read it before you go shopping if you need to shop for something so that you get the right product. Also make sure that you have the right equipment. Make sure that what you're going to be needing, like a pan to put, I'm going to be canning like 8.5 pounds of mushrooms that have to cook down. I need to make sure I have bowls big enough to accommodate that. I need to make sure we have a pan big enough to pre-cook the mushrooms. And I need to make sure that I have the right size jars, that they're clean, that they have no cracks, and that my canner will accommodate what we are going to be canning today. You want to make sure that all of your equipment is clean and sterile. You want to make sure that your countertops and all of your utensils are clean and sterile. And you always, 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 when you can, use new lids. Do not reuse your lids. It's not safe. It's not even not recommended. It isn't safe. Please be a safe canner, please. 7.5 pounds of mushrooms should yield us approximately 9 half pints. You want to get the freshest product that you can, okay? We actually have an international market that we went to this morning, and we picked up a 10-pound flat of medium mushrooms. These mushrooms are grown somewhat locally, and we're very excited about that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I put my clean, very large bowl onto a digital scale because I do want to measure out as close to it as I can get. You see that cap is open. I could can this, okay, but I have enough where I'm not going to be canning everything in there. You want to have closed caps if you can. You see how there's no opening? You don't see any of the gills in there? Very important. I have another bowl. I'm going to call this the discard bowl. So if I come across these, they're going to end up in spaghetti. Twins! I'll be measuring these in 2 batches. So this is the pot that we're going to use. This is actually the bottom of our steam canner. The way that our steam canner is set up, we have an insert, so we're able to have this large pot. This is a 20-quart pot. And so I'm taking my mushrooms and I'm putting them in there to make sure that my mushrooms stay submerged and that everybody gets a little bath here. I just put some cold water in the bowl that I used for measuring, and I set it on top. And that way, most of the mushrooms are going to be underwater. And I am going to agitate them a little bit here and there. Look at that adorable little timer. I just set it for 10 minutes while the mushrooms do their little 10-minute soak according to the directions. While the mushrooms are soaking, I'm going to go ahead and get my lids washed. Food safety is no laughing matter. I like to make sure my sink is very clean, but also use a clean rag when you're going to wash all of your equipment and give it a good scrub, because the cleaner you start out, the less chance of contamination that you're going to encounter when you're canning. I have my clean lids. They'll be ready to turn on to heat up when we're ready to start the process. I've already washed these jars in the dishwasher, so I'm confident that they're sterile. Inspect the top of our jar for any blemishes. Do it visually first, because if you see a chip, obviously you're going to put that jar in the trash. Don't save it for any cut flowers, because you know what's going to happen is you're going to forget one day and jeopardize your health. Also make sure that we have no blemishes here, no cracks, nothing like that, okay? This looks good. These happen to be jars I've only used a couple times. So I'm going to give it a quick wash because I just have my hands all over it. Okay, now, it's been 10 minutes, the timer went off, and I'm just going to give these another quick push. There's a lot of mushrooms, guys. Lots and lots of mushrooms. I've already rinsed the bowl out, okay? We're going to give these a wash after this. All we're doing is rinsing them out. And I'm going to put them back into this bowl. And as I do that, I'm going to be looking at the mushrooms to just make sure that I didn't miss any that have scars or major discoloration. So as I go, I'm just kind of taking my hand, looking through them. They're coming out, okay? And I actually have 2 of these bowls, and they're the same color, so that I know that these are all the ones that have been through one process or another. So I'm going to put this off to the side. No scars in the jars. Look at all of the dirt and stuff that came off of those when they soaked, okay? That's an important step you don't want to miss. I am now filling the pot that I've just washed with hot soapy water and rinsed well, about halfway with cold water. This is where the cleaned and stemmed mushrooms will be put, because this is the next step. Now it says to leave small mushrooms whole and slice larger ones. In pint jars, everybody, we're not going to have like a lot of space, okay? So for these are about 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches. We're going to do 18 jars. That means that we're going to be double stacking when we can. We have an All-American canner. This is a 921, and this canner actually holds 2 rows. Okay, we'll show you that when they go in. We are going to boil these for 5 minutes. We're starting with cold mushrooms and cold water. Do not start with hot water, or it won't be the way it needs to be. Whenever you're cooking cold vegetables, start with cold water. That's what a boil looks like. Boil 5 full minutes. Meanwhile, we have our pressure canner coming up to temperature with the water, because a hot pack means hot jars, hot food, hot water, hot canner. No thermal shock here, folks. That's nice and steamy, as you can see. And we are just about there. Oh my goodness. And it smells good in here too. When we set the timer for the mushrooms, I also started the actual simmer process for the 4 jars lids. I have brought my mushrooms next to my station here. We have our hot jar that just came out of a sink with really, really hot water in it. I'm using a slotted spoon. It's been cleaned. I should have done this before, but I'm going to show you now. Now this is completely optional. This is ascorbic acid. Calls for 1/2 teaspoon per pint of salt. I'm going to use a little less than 1/4 for this 1/2 pint. Now I'll be putting this at the bottom of all my jars, as noted on my handy dandy Post-it. Now make sure you use canning salt. Do not use table salt, because table salt has an anti-caking agent that is not conducive to pretty food on the shelf. I'm a fan of chopsticks for debubbling. I just like to be able to get between everything, and I find that the reusable chopsticks, I use bamboo, works well. And oh my goodness, these are beautiful. You want to make sure you don't have any air pockets in here, okay? And then it's a 1-inch headspace. Typically, a 1-inch headspace is going to be this ring, the bottom ring of your jar, okay? Just going to take my clean paper towel here, see that? Make sure you don't have any debris whatsoever between your lid and your jar, can cause a compromise. I'm going to take my far jar's lid, and I like the lid and the date to kind of center with the label on the jar. Goofy, yes, but it's Michelle. Classic Michelle. Little OCD here. I think I just saw a video with OCD. There's a t-shirt for that. So we're going to make this fingertip tight, okay? See that? It's not going to go any further. If we tighten it down too much, there's not enough room for air to vent out of the jar, and you can cause failure, and we don't want all of this hard work to go to waste, now do we? So I'm just going to take my clamp, okay, and I'm going to lift this up. I am not going to tip this jar, and neither are you. We don't want anything to get into that seal. So we're going to take that, and I'm putting it into my canner. I'll do one more while you're watching, and then I'm going to go to town. I'm going to put in my 1/8 of a teaspoon of ascorbic acid. You can also use a 500 milligram vitamin C tablet. The broth in here is already a really good start for some mushroom broth to put on the shelf. You can use it as in place of beef broth, but it also makes a really nice broth if you want to have a real simple soup for lunch. You can add some egg noodles, some dried parsley, and maybe a little salt and pepper if you want. So, okay, so we got that in there. We're going to debubble, debubble, debubble. We don't want to go over that 1-inch headspace. I feel like I have a little too much in there, so I'm going to get a plastic utensil, not metal, and I'm going to pull a couple mushrooms out and put them back. Yeah, I like that better. I like that a lot better. And our 4 jars lid. And our rings. Fingertip tight, not too tight. Okay, everyone, this is exciting. We actually have 17 half pints of mushrooms here and 4 quarts of mushroom broth for another time. I have an all-American canner. There's an arrow on this, okay? And it's going to line up with an arrow on the top of the canner. Then we're going to make sure that everything is equal. You may have to adjust a little bit, but you want your lid to be centered in a way that it's not higher on one side than another. You may have to just tap it down and make sure. Then what you do with an All-American is you take your latches opposite sides. You don't go too tight at first. Might have to loosen them a little bit. And then you just tighten them from opposite ends. Then we'll go and tighten it down a bit more. So all-American canners have a vent pipe and a gauge, okay? We use the weighted gauge over here. That's how we actually gauge our canning. Make sure it's centered on your stove. We leave all of these on here because they tell you to leave them on. So now what I'm going to do is turn it up to 9.5 on my stove. I have my weighted gauge handy. We actually have two All-American canners. We have a 915 and a 921. So we labeled this, okay? We labeled this little envelope. And once we're finished canning, every time we clean our canner, we dry everything off really well, and then we take all the equipment that belongs with each canner, including the lid, and we put them together inside of the canner. That includes the manufacturer's instructions. So we just keep them real handy here all the time, and I highly suggest that you do the same. That way you always know that your equipment's together and you're ready to go. So we're going to let this come up to steam. Keep some notes with you so that you can write things down in case your timer fails, or if you didn't hit the start button, because sometimes that happens, okay? Now when we say rolling like a freight train, you see blank spots in there. Do you see that steam over there? And then you see like nothing for just, you know, a half a second or so. When we say like a freight train, there is no gap, okay? So we're not ready to start timing yet. We are not fully vented. We need to evacuate as much air, all of the air, from inside of the chamber of the pressure canner as possible. Now we're starting to hear it, but you see that there are still gaps, okay? Not ready yet. Now that we are there, we're going to go ahead and set our timer for 10 minutes. And we're going to write down what time it is, just in case. Okie dokie. Our 10 minutes are up. I have my 10 pounds of pressure. My weighted gauge is going to go on now. Woo! And in not too long, it's going to start jiggling. And then at that point, when we get it set, and it's going at least 2 to 3 or 4 times every minute, which will require us to adjust down on our electric stove, we will begin our 45-minute processing time. Once again, we're going to write that down on our handy dandy sheet. And I'm going to thank MouseToes for this, okay? Because she's the one that taught me about this. All right, there it is, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reduce my heat to about 7. And that's because I know how my stove's going to react. We want to bring the pressure down so that it's not constantly doing that vibration, okay? That would be too much pressure. So I'm going to bring it down so that we get like maybe 3. We usually go 3 per minute. That's our sweet spot. So I brought it down to 7 from 8.5. And then once it slows down a bit, I'm going to go ahead and bring it down a little bit more. Eventually we're going to be at 5.5 because that's how our stove goes. It's electric. So we now have our 45 minutes on our Radio Shack timer. I'm going to go ahead and hit it because we are under pressure now. I think it's worth noting that if you are actually relying upon your pressure gauge, your geared gauge, we are at 11.5 pounds of pressure right now. We're actually at 12. So I'm going to bring it down and then it'll be at the 11 pounds of pressure. So again, we use our weighted gauge for canning, like everything that we do. But that pressure gauge is helpful. And the pressure gauge needs, at our elevation, needs to be at 11 pounds of pressure for 45 minutes in order to have a successful canning session. So I do kind of use it a little bit, like I said, and we're still not down, so I'm going to take this down to 6.5. Well, I hope I didn't lose all my sound in the last couple things I've done. So just to recap, this went down below as the 0. Then I removed my weighted gauge, We then waited just a couple minutes, then we took these clamps off and propped this up for about 10 minutes. We're at about 15 minutes now after that. I have a mat down so that I can remove the top of my pressure canner. Open it away from yourself. I'm going to get these out of the canner. We're going to let them cool down for 18 to 24 hours, basically when I get off work tomorrow night. So I'm just putting these right over by the sink. Notice how I'm going to lift straight up. Then we're going to set it down. We're not tipping anything. It's very important that we don't tip, just like before, because you could contaminate the seal. These are already sealing. Tomorrow, I'll come back. Welcome back. It's the day after. I'm just getting home from work, and that's usually what we do. We let them sit for a day. What I'm going to do is clean these jars off. If you've never canned before, I want you to notice how loose that screw cap was. Now, what I'm going to do, I have a sink full of hot sudsy water, and I actually give it a couple of really nice tugs and make sure nothing pops open. All of my jars sealed last night, so I'm just going to show you real quick. Here's another jar. Give it a little push up there. Looks nice and tight. Got another new wash rag. Sink's clean. I have some dishwashing detergent in here. If I was doing something sticky, I might add a little bit of vinegar to the solution, but this isn't the case. I'll rinse it off with nice hot water. Again, if it was sticky, I'd also take a brush and get right up underneath all those crevices, but this is not that type of product. Okay, now what I've done is I'm just going to set these aside, and then we're going to label them when I get them all done. Okay, got them all cleaned up, and all my nice 4 jars lids have sealed, and now we're just going to go ahead and label. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much again to Leisa at Suttons Daze for inviting us to be a part of Canuary 2024. Don't forget to look for this logo up here, okay, to make sure that you are commenting and watching the channels that are a part of this collaboration. A huge shout out to 4 Jars and Suttons Daze for sponsoring this collaboration. Canuary 2024, let's go! Oh man, I can't wait to break into these mushrooms. Ha! Stay tuned, come back and watch us on the 22nd of January, please. We'll be doing marinated mushrooms. Yes, and they are delicious. In the meantime, have a great day. Go watch all the other really fantastic channels that are part of Canuary 2024. And from the Big Valley in California, see you later, everybody. Be kind.